What happens when one of Hollywood's most admired and intelligent leading actresses squares off against a talk show host who refuses to yield, refuses to soften, and refuses to back down from her own controversial stance? Sparks, flames, a televised wildfire that audiences would talk about for years. This is the legendary clash between Nadia Preston, a performer known not only for her Oscar-winning screen presence, but for her razor-sharp activism, and Jenna Bell, the boldest voice on the hit daytime talk show The Viewpoint. From the moment Nadia stepped on stage that afternoon, the atmosphere shifted. The crowd cheered wildly at first, but beneath the applause, an odd silence lurked. Something in the air felt charged, electrically unpredictable. Nadia wasn't new to interviews. She had spent the past month promoting her directorial debut, a heart-wrenching film about women fighting for freedom in oppressive regimes. Critics were already calling it one of the most important films of the decade. The other hosts on The Viewpoint greeted her with genuine warmth. How did you select the cast? What inspired this project? What do you want young audiences to take away from your film? She answered each with grace, her voice passionate but composed, her sincerity unmistakable. Then came Jenna's turn. "So, Nadia," Jenna began, wearing a smirk so subtle that viewers might have missed the warning. But Nadia noticed, the producer noticed, millions at home felt the tension like static on their skin. "Your new movie is quite political," Jenna continued, crossing her arms. "Some might say you're using your celebrity platform to push a very specific agenda." The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Nadia kept her poise, offering a polite but firm smile. "Telling stories about human rights isn't political, Jenna. It's about human dignity, about decency." Jenna leaned forward, eyes narrowed like a hawk ready to strike. "Oh, come on. You're clearly targeting certain groups with this message. Don't you think celebrities should stay in their lane instead of lecturing everyone else about the world?" A hush spread across the studio. One of the hosts inhaled sharply. Another reached quietly for her water glass. The director in the control room whispered, "Uh-oh, here we go." Nadia shifted slightly, only enough to show she wasn't rattled yet. "I think artists have a responsibility to challenge people," she replied. "Stories shape societies. Films make us ask questions we might otherwise ignore." Jenna's laugh came out like a slap. "Please," she scoffed, rolling her eyes with theatrical exaggeration. "You've lived in luxury for most of your adult life. What qualifies you to make a film about authoritarianism? How could someone like you possibly understand oppression?" The crowd gasped audibly. This wasn't questioning anymore. This was a direct attack. Nadia's jaw tightened. Her fingers curled subtly around her microphone, a physical anchor, steadying her. When she spoke again, her voice carried a sharper edge. "I studied political psychology for years. I've worked with humanitarian organizations in regions most people are too afraid to even read about. I've interviewed survivors. I've listened. I've learned." Jenna raised an eyebrow skeptically, but Nadia continued, refusing to let the interruption land. "And more importantly, I believe silence is a privilege, one I choose not to accept." The audience erupted into applause, spontaneous, supportive, empowering. But Jenna wasn't finished. Yes, you did some studying," Jenna said with a dismissive flick of her wrist. "But you make movies. That's entertainment. It's not real life. Ordinary people are tired of being preached to by Hollywood elites." Nadia sat forward now, eyes locked directly on Jenna's. "And ordinary people are tired of suffering while others say nothing." She fired back, voice rising just enough to command respect without losing control. "If bringing awareness to their struggles makes me political, then I proudly accept the label." The energy in the room shifted. The audience felt it. The cameras zoomed in tighter and tighter. Jenna, sensing she might be losing the battle, tried one final blow. "You think you're changing the world, but really, you're just stirring outrage. Maybe you enjoy controversy more than the truth. That was it." The breaking point. Nadia inhaled slowly. Her expression softened not with defeat, but with clarity. "Jenna," she said carefully, "the truth is controversial to those who benefit from ignoring it." Boom. The crowd exploded, cheering, shouting, stamping their feet. Two hosts began clapping enthusiastically. Even a few camera operators grinned behind their equipment. Jenna sat back, stunned eyes wide. She had expected anger, maybe a meltdown, but what she got was a perfectly delivered knockout line. crafted with intellect and grace. Nadia wasn't done. "You invited me here to discuss my film," she said, rising from her chair. "I came in good faith to share a story that matters. If advocating for basic human dignity scares you, maybe look inward before you criticize others." Her mic clicked softly as she reset it on her collar. "I'll come back anytime you want to talk about the work. But if this show would rather tear down people trying to make a difference, then I won't waste my breath." The audience rose to their feet in roaring applause. Jenna watched her silently, no smirk now, only shock. Producers frantically gestured for a commercial break. The studio lights shimmered on Nadia's confident smile as she gave a final graceful nod, and walked off stage like a warrior who had won the battle not with insults, but with conviction. The moment became legend. Clips spread like wildfire. A line was drawn, and Nadia Preston stood firmly on the side of courage. From the moment Elena Ward, an actress turned director, stepped onto the brightly lit set of the midday panel, the atmosphere was electric. Cameras swiveled, the studio lights gleamed, and the audience clapped politely. What was intended to be a routine 20-minute promotional interview for her latest film about social justice quickly became a showdown that no one in daytime television would ever forget. Elena had come to discuss her new movie, a gripping drama exploring systemic oppression and the struggles of ordinary people in restrictive societies. Most of the co-hosts were warm and welcoming, asking thoughtful questions about her creative process and the message behind the film. The tone seemed set for a constructive and lively conversation, but then came Jessa Hale, the veteran co-host whose reputation for sparking controversy preceded her. She had that look in her eyes, the one viewers instantly recognized as a warning. Her smile was sweet but predatory, and the studio audience, along with everyone in the control room, could sense the storm brewing. "So, Elena," Jessa began, voice deceptively calm, "your new movie is quite political. Some might say you're using your platform to push a very particular agenda." A murmur ran through the audience. The energy shifted. This wasn't going to be a light-hearted conversation about filmmaking. This was personal, and it was about to get sharp. Elena tilted her head, keeping her composure. "Telling stories about social justice isn't political," she said evenly. "It's about human dignity and awareness." Jessa leaned forward, the cameras catching every movement, every flicker of tension. "Come on, Elena," she pressed. "You're clearly targeting certain groups with this film. Don't you think celebrities should stay in their lane rather than lecturing the public about politics?" One of the other hosts, sunny and diplomatic, tried to intervene. "Jessa, maybe we should focus on the artistic merits of the film rather than politics." But Jessa waved her off with a sharp hand gesture. No, this is important. Elena, don't you think it's a bit hypocritical for someone who's spent their life in luxury, acting in glamorous movies, to lecture working-class audiences about their choices?" The audience gasped. The question landed like a physical slap, sharp and personal. Elena's composure, usually so flawless under pressure, faltered for just a fraction of a second. "Excuse me," she said, her voice tightening. "I've been performing professionally since I was 12 years old. Acting isn't just playing dress-up. It's a craft. It's a discipline. I've worked with some of the most respected directors in cinema history. To reduce my career to costumes and appearances is disrespectful not just to me. To every working actor who dedicates their life to the art of storytelling." Jessa smirked, leaning back slightly. "Ah, so now you're offended. You can dish it out on screen, but you can't take a little honest criticism off screen." Elena's eyes narrowed and her voice rose slightly, carrying through the studio like a bell cutting through fog. "Honest criticism would involve discussing the film's themes, its execution, or its message. What you're doing is launching personal attacks because you disagree with my perspective." Jessa's eyes lit up, sensing that she was striking a nerve. She pressed harder. "Your perspective," she said, voice dripping with condescension. "You mean your privileged, out-of-touch perspective. Tell me, when was the last time you worried about paying rent or putting food on the table?" The studio fell into tense silence, punctuated only by the subtle hum of cameras and the faint rustle of the crew. Even the production assistants in the back looked uncomfortable, shifting nervously. Elena drew a slow, controlled breath, visibly regaining her composure. My background doesn't invalidate my right to create art or speak about issues I care about, she said firmly. And frankly, Jessa, your attempts to silence me because of my success say more about you than they do about me. Jessa's voice sharpened, becoming almost shrill. Silence you? You're on national television. How am I silencing you? I'm just asking you to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, you don't speak for everyone. I never claim to speak for everyone, Elena replied, voice unwavering. But I do have a right, a responsibility to use my platform wisely and to raise awareness where it matters most. Jessie slammed her hand on the table, the sound reverberating through the studio, startling the audience. Responsibility? You call demonizing half the country responsible filmmaking? The cameras zoomed in on Elena as her voice grew stronger, more commanding. The film doesn't demonize anyone, she shot back. It challenges harmful ideas and asks the audience to think critically. That is not demonization. That is art serving a purpose. And if you can't recognize that, perhaps your problem lies in your unwillingness to listen rather than in my intent as a filmmaker. The audience erupted into applause, many standing in admiration of her poise and clarity. The other co-hosts nodded in support, while Jessa, for the first time in the segment, looked momentarily taken aback. Elena continued, her voice measured but sharp. I understand that my perspective comes from a position of privilege, yes, but acknowledging that doesn't mean my voice is invalid. It means I have a responsibility to use it thoughtfully. To attack me personally because you disagree with my world, you as petty, mean-spirited, and ultimately counterproductive. The studio fell into a tense quiet once more. The crew members exchanged glances. A few whispered to each other in disbelief. Even the audience, previously murmuring in surprise and discomfort, now watched in awe as the exchange reached its peak. Jessa's expression hardened. You know, Elena, maybe you're right, maybe I shouldn't attack you personally. But it's hard not to, when people in your position act as though your life experience somehow makes you morally superior to everyone else. Elena leaned forward slightly, her gaze unwavering, piercing through the lights and cameras alike. I'm not claiming moral superiority, she said. I am claiming the right to speak with integrity and purpose. And if raising awareness about injustice seems preaky to you, that's your perspective, not mine. I will not apologize for telling the stories that matter, and I will not allow personal attacks to overshadow the work I've poured my heart into. The tension in the studio reached a breaking point. The audience clapped, some even standing, sensing they had witnessed a masterclass in composure under fire. The other hosts exchanged subtle nods of respect. Jessa, realizing that Elena would not be rattled, leaned back, finally silent. She had underestimated the resilience and clarity of her guest. Elena, maintaining eye contact with the cameras, concluded, the purpose of art is to provoke thought, inspire action, and shed light where darkness thrives. If you disagree with the message, debate the ideas. Don't attack the messenger. That is the difference between constructive discussion and petty theatrics. As the cameras cut to a brief commercial, the studio buzzed with adrenaline. Social media lit up instantly, clips of the exchange going viral within minutes. The segment would go down in history as one of the most intense, intellectually charged, and emotionally gripping confrontations in daytime television. And Elena Ward, she had not only defended her work, she had defended the integrity of her art, her perspective, and her voice. A true victory, delivered with intelligence, courage, and unshakable poise. The segment had already been tense, but nobody in the studio was prepared for what came next. Natalie had been calm, almost too calm, when she explained her film's theme. It tells a story about what happens when people give up their freedoms for the promise of security. If you see yourself in the antagonists, maybe you should ask why. The moment the words left her mouth, the audience reacted like a single, living creature. A collective gasp rippled through the room. People leaned forward in their seats, sensing a line had been crossed, or perhaps a truth had been spoken that someone in the room did not want to hear. Joy's face flushed a furious shade of red, the anger rising in her so quickly it looked almost painful. She pointed a trembling finger directly at Natalie, her voice breaking with rage as she hissed, "How dare you?" The studio froze. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate, the operators unsure whether to zoom in or brace for a commercial cut. Joy was no stranger to heated debates, but this was different. It was personal. How dare you sit there, she jabbed her finger again, and imply that I'm some kind of fascist just because I disagree with your little art project? Natalie didn't flinch. Despite the storm building across from her, she stayed grounded, her expression composed, almost serene. I didn't call you anything, Joy, she said, her tone controlled but sharp enough to cut. I simply said that if the shoe fits, perhaps you should examine why. That subtle, precise response only poured gasoline on Joy's outrage. She scoffed, shaking her head. Oh, you think you're so clever with your little word games? She spat. This is exactly what's wrong with Hollywood elites like you. You think you're smarter than everyone else. One of the other hosts, Sarah Haynes, finally mustered the courage to intervene. Her voice trembled. Maybe we should take a commercial break, just to cool down a bit. No. Joy snapped the word like a whip, never taking her eyes off Natalie. I want to finish this conversation. The air felt brittle, like a sheet of glass stretching thinner and thinner. Let me ask you something. Joy continued, leaning forward with an intensity that made even the audience recoil. Do you think the millions of Americans who disagree with your politics are just stupid? Natalie's eyes flashed with anger for the first time, but her voice still carried that calm, deliberate steadiness. I think people have a right to their opinions, Joy, truly, but I also think people have a responsibility to examine where those opinions come from, and whether they're grounded in facts or in fear. Joy repeated the phrase, mocking it. Facts or fear, she said, her voice cracking with indignation. So anyone who doesn't agree with your world, you is operating from fear. That's incredibly condescending. What's condescending? Natalie replied, her patience fraying at the edges, is assuming that because someone is an actor, they can't have informed opinions about the world they live in. That was it. Joy laughed, an ugly, bitter sound that felt more like an insult than amusement. Informed opinions, she sneered. You live in a bubble, sweetheart. You have no idea what real people go through. That word, sweetheart, hung in the air like a slap. Several audience members stiffened. One or two gasped. Even the usually unflappable Whoopi looked stunned, her eyebrows lifting as if to say, did she really just say that? Natalie's expression changed instantly. Her eyes narrowed, her posture shifted, and for the first time she looked genuinely offended. Did you just call me sweetheart? She asked quietly, in a professional setting, while simultaneously trying to lecture me about my credibility. Oh, are you going to play the victim now? Joy shot back. Go on, add sexism to your list of complaints. Why not? It fits your narrative. I'm not playing anything, Natalie replied, her voice turning colder with each word. I'm pointing out that your behavior right now is proving every point my film makes about how people in positions of influence try to diminish those who challenge them. Joy's face twisted with rage. People in power? She echoed mockingly. I'm not in power. I'm a comedian who happened to get a job on a talk show. Natalie shook her head. You have a platform that reaches millions of people, Joy. You use that platform to influence public opinion. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, that is power. And you don't have power. Joy screamed, losing the last thread of her composure. You don't think starring in blockbuster movies gives you power. You don't think having millions of followers gives you influence. Of course it does. Natalie said factly. The difference is that I'm trying to use that influence responsibly. Her words landed with a gravity that silenced the room. Joy stared at her, trembling with fury, unable to find the next insult or the next comeback. Natalie continued, her voice steady but firm. You asked whether I think people who disagree with me are stupid. I don't. I think people are overwhelmed, misinformed, manipulated, afraid, and when someone comes along with a narrative that offers certainty or comfort, no matter how false or dangerous, it's easy to cling to it. The audience was hanging on every word now. My film isn't attacking anyone personally, Natalie said. It's a warning, a reminder of what happens when a society stops questioning, stops thinking critically, and starts trading freedom for the illusion of safety. Joy opened her mouth, but no sound came out. And if that makes you uncomfortable, Natalie added quietly, maybe the question you should be asking isn't whether I'm insulting you, but why the message feels like it's aimed at you. For the first time since the confrontation began, Joy looked unsure. Not defeated. Joy never looked defeated, but shaken. The co-hosts exchanged glances. The producers hovered their fingers over the go-to-commercial button like it was a detonator. The tension in the studio was thick enough to cut with a knife. From the moment Elena Ward, an accomplished actress turned director, sat down on the brightly lit set of the midday panel, the atmosphere had been volatile, but now it teetered on the edge of outright chaos. Across the semicircular desk sat Jessa Hale, the veteran co-host known for her biting commentary and relentless provocation. Her eyes blazed with fury, her posture rigid, as if the very presence of Elena had triggered a long simmering ire. Elena began calmly, responsibly. Jessa's jaw tightened. Her voice rose, practically foaming with incredulity. Now you call attacking traditional values responsible? I'm not attacking anything. Elena replied evenly, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. I'm asking questions. I'm encouraging people to think critically about the world around them. If that threatens you, maybe you should ask yourself why. The audience shifted nervously in their seats. The usual polite applause had died away, replaced by a tense, expectant silence. Even the camera operators, hidden behind their lenses, seemed to hold their breath. Jessa suddenly stood, the scraping of her chair against the studio floor startling the crew. "You know what?" she shouted, eyes blazing. "I'm sick of your sanctimonious attitude. You come on our show, act like you're better than everyone, and then have the nerve to analyze me on live television." Elena remained seated, looking up at Jessa with a mixture of pity and controlled disdain. "I never said I was better than anyone," she said firmly, "but I do believe in treating people with respect." Elena continued, her voice calm yet piercing. "Even when we disagree something you seem incapable of doing." Jessa's voice cracked as she shouted, "Respect? You want to talk about respect? You've been condescending to me since the moment you sat down. I've been defending myself against your unprovoked attacks." Elena's composure wavered for the first time, though only slightly. "From the moment I walked out here, you've been trying to bait me into an argument instead of engaging in an actual conversation about my work." She shot back, voice rising just enough to convey both frustration and authority. "Your work?" Jessa laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound that echoed unnervingly through the studio. "Your work is propaganda disguised as entertainment." The audience erupted into murmurs, unsure whether to boo or cheer. The other hosts, sitting frozen, exchanged panicked glances, hesitant to intervene in what had become an all-out meltdown. Elena stood, moving deliberately and with controlled grace. Her presence alone seemed to calm a fraction of the chaos. "You know what, Jessa?" she said, her voice firm, unwavering. "You've made it very clear that you have no interest in an intelligent discussion. You're more interested in creating drama for ratings. Don't you walk away from me?" Jessa demanded, voice shrill and desperate. "We're not finished here. Actually, we are," Elena replied calmly, reaching to remove her microphone. Her movements were slow, deliberate, every gesture radiating control. "You don't get to just walk away." Jessa screamed, her voice booming across the studio. "This is my show. This is my show." Elena paused, hand still on her microphone, and turned to face her accuser. Her expression was one of absolute disdain. "Your show," she said coldly. "Last time I checked, this was called the midday panel, not the Jessa Hale hour." The other hosts exchanged nervous, panicked glances. The tension was palpable, hanging over the room like a storm cloud. Finally, sunny host, attempting diplomacy, spoke. "Jessa, please, let's all just take a step back here." But Jessa was beyond reason. "No, Sunny, I'm tired of these Hollywood types coming on here and thinking they can lecture us about how to live our lives." "I never lectured anyone about how to live their lives," Elena said, voice cutting through the hysteria like ice. "I made a film. If that threatens you so much that you feel the need to personally attack me on national television, maybe you should consider what that says about your own insecurities." Jessa's mouth fell open in disbelief. "My insecurities? You're calling me insecure? I'm calling you unprofessional." Elena replied coldly. "I'm calling you a bully, and frankly, I'm calling you exactly the kind of person my film warns about." The audience was on the edge of their seats. Some gasped audibly, others clapped, unsure whether they were supporting Elena or shocked by the confrontation. The co-hosts were frozen, caught between maintaining decorum and witnessing a historic clash of wills. Elena's eyes were fierce, unflinching. I have spent years studying these issues, researching tirelessly, and telling stories that matter. Your personal attacks do not diminish the work I've done, nor do they change the truth behind it. You mean your privileged, out-of-touch perspective? Jessa snapped, her face flushed. When was the last time you worried about paying rent or putting food on the table? That's irrelevant, Elena said, her voice gaining authority and clarity. My experiences do not negate the right to create art or to challenge ideas that are harmful or outdated. Attacking me personally is not a debate, it's bullying. Jessie slammed her hand on the desk again, the sound reverberating through the studio. You're condescending. You think you're better than everyone. I'm not, Elena said evenly, locking eyes with Jessa. I am asking for respect, and I am asking for the conversation to be about the work itself, the story, the message. The idea is not about personal attacks. The studio was electric. The audience clapped, a few standing, overwhelmed by the intensity. The cameras caught every second, every subtle movement, the shimmer of studio lights reflecting off the tense faces. Elena continued, her voice controlled, calm, and lethal in its clarity. Art exists to provoke thought, to challenge assumptions, to question norms. If my work threatens you so much that you must attack me personally, perhaps the problem lies not in the art, but in the fear it exposes within you. Jessa's expression faltered. For a split second, the confidence and fire were gone, replaced by disbelief. Elena's measured calm and unwavering focus had neutralized the theatrics, leaving only the stark clarity of her point. Elena turned, still standing, and addressed the cameras directly. My film does not demonize, it educates, it inspires reflection. And if this exchange has shown anything, it's that meaningful art will always challenge comfort zones, and sometimes it will ruffle feathers. That's how change begins. As the cameras cut to a commercial, the audience remained buzzing, still processing the verbal duel they had witnessed. Clips would go viral within hours. Headlines would describe it as a masterclass in composure under pressure. And Elena Ward had emerged not only unscathed but victorious, proving that intellect, poise, and courage are more powerful than anger and theatrics.